Well, hello everyone. This is Dave Strong from the Schmidt Music Saxophone Shop, and today we're going to talk about 2-5-1s. So this is we're finally getting to our next jazz theory video, and I'm really excited about this one. 2-5-1s were one of my first big breakthroughs on how to play jazz. I went through high school. I knew the blues scale. I had heard about modes and Mixolydian and Dorian, and I kind of got the concept of them. But what I never really dug in on or never really understood fully was what a 2-5-1 is. So to get started with this, we're going to do something a little weird. We're going to move up to my practice room. This is my wife's practice room actually, but it has better light, so it's what I use. We're going to move up to my practice room, and this is going to take a little keyboard. And I'll warn you ahead of time, I am not a piano player, but I play a little bit, and I think every jazz player should at least have a little bit of keyboard under their fingers. And we'll talk about 2-5-1s, and then we'll come back down here and talk about how to apply them on the saxophone. So yeah, let's talk about the major 2-5-1. So yeah, on piano, if you don't play any piano, I'll try to talk along with the notes as much as I can. But for jazz players, it's a great idea to learn at least a little bit of piano. I didn't start until college, but boy, was I happy when I did start picking up some piano, because a lot of the theory stuff just started making a lot more sense to me. So let's start off in the key of C here. So C. And when we're talking 2-5-1, this is when, remember in the modes video, and if you haven't watched the Dorian or Mixolydian videos, go back and watch those first. Those are going to help a lot. But in the modes video, when I talked about, we had a C major scale, F, G, A, B, C. Now the second note on that is D. Now if you remember, we said if we made a scale out of that, going D to D in that same key signature, that's the Dorian scale. Now if you remember, I said I like to think about it as a D major scale, but flatting the third and flatting the seventh. That's a great way to think of it if you're playing scale-wise, but if you're thinking chords, if I go 1, 3, 5, 7, that's the 2 chord over a C major scale. So if you're in the key of C, that's your 2. Now the nice thing about that is you have the 3rd and 7th in there, but I'm thinking in the key of C, I'm just taking C major triad, or sorry, C major 7 chord, 1, 3, 5, 7, moving it up a step to the 2. Now if I do the same thing with the 5, because remember we're talking about a 2-5-1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a G. Let's do the same thing, 1, 3, 5, 7. Now, if you remember the 5, the 5th scale element was Mixolydian, so that's my Mixolydian scale, but if I go 1, 3, 5, 7, it's my dominant 7th chord. That's why the Mixolydian scale works so well over those 5-7 chords with the dominant 7th chords. So really, I'm not touching any of the black keys, which would be my sharps or flats. I'm just going 2, 5, and 1. And that's a super common chord progression in jazz and in a lot of pop music as well. It's just a common chord progression. So yeah, again, we're moving from the D minor 7 to the G7 to the C major 7. Now, playing it that way, I won't get too much into piano theory, but playing it that way is a lot of jumping around. So what you're going to see me doing in the examples is compressing a little bit, meaning I'm going to... And that's the same notes pretty much, it's just I'm moving less around and jumping around. And you can do that with chords. Kind of the same way in improvisation, I don't always play everything in a straight line scale-wise. Chord-wise, I can voice them differently, just to make it a little easier under my hands. Now the cool thing about 2-5-1s is they're not always going to be in the key of the song that you're playing. So if I'm in a key that's in C major, that's not the only 2-5-1 that I'll see. And a lot of times you can kind of stack them on top of each other and make a sequence. Now hold on, I won't get too deep into this, but when you're doing 2-5-1s, it's a term relative to what you land on. So I could be in the key of F for the song, but if I play, that means it's still a 2-5-1, even though in F, it really would be a 5, starting on a 5. But it's about where it lands. And what's cool about that is you can then start having them lead into each other and doing some cool things. And you can start to see kind of how a lot of jazz standards are built. So what I can do is a 2-5-1 landing on C, 2-5-1. Let's say I make that C a minor and do it again. 2, 5, 1, and now I've landed on a B flat. I can make that a minor. And you can keep doing that. And it lets jazz composers make the song more interesting, and you can have the 2-5-1s sequence into each other to try to land on whatever chord you want to ultimately land on. And if this is really important, if you ever have heard of what they call bird blues or Parker blues, that's what that was all about. Blues for Alice is a great example, and we'll go through that on saxophone in a little bit here. But it's a song all made up of major and minor 2-5-1s, you know. Once you get the sound into your ear of what a 2-5-1 sounds like, you can start recognizing that. And that's really cool. It was one of the biggest breakthroughs I had in playing, because as soon as I stopped looking at individual chords and looking at, oh, that's a 2-5-1, that's a 2-5-1, those songs that if you ever look at a lead sheet for a song and it has a ton of chord changes, it's intimidating at first, because you think, how am I going to play all those chords, and it goes by so fast. But if I have a lick over a 2-5-1, 3 chords I just compressed into 1. And if I see it goes into other 2-5s, it's like, oh, this is just a sequence of 2-5s. This song isn't as complicated as it looks. All of a sudden I have some idea, I have some language and vocabulary that can go over it. And if you notice in the Parker blues, sometimes you'll hear something that sounds like... And what that is you notice I'm just moving chromatically down. So I'm doing a 2-5-1 in A. And instead of landing on the 1, I'm landing a half step down. And that's something we're going to talk about in a future video. That's what's called, it's based off of tritone substitution, which sounds scary, not so scary actually at all. But yeah, look that up if you want it beforehand, but I do hope to have a video out on the tritone subs. But that is what a 2-5-1 is. Now I'm going to quit with the piano because obviously it's not my main instrument. And we're going to talk about how to use that and apply that to your saxophone playing. All right, so hopefully some of that keyboard stuff made sense. I know it's a lot of theory we're throwing at you right away, but it's really not as tough as it sounds. And the goal of learning what a 2-5-1 is, rather than trying to play each individual chord, is to simplify things. So if I can spot a 2-5-1, if I see a D minor going to a G7, going to a C major 7, I think, oh, I know what that is. And it instantly makes that a little bit easier for me. And the reason that makes that easier for me is because the D minor is the Dorian scale that I'd play over it, which is, the key of a C major scale. The G7 is also the Mixolydian, which is the same notes as the C major scale, and then it goes down to a C major scale, which is the same notes as a C major scale. So all of a sudden I realize, hey, I see 3 chords, but it's all the same notes. Now, we have a different emphasis on the notes. We probably want to land on stuff in C major when we hit that one chord, but I'm not having to think 3 different keys. And that's what really hung me up when I was younger. I'd see something like that Parker blues and go, wow, look at all the chords. But if every 3 chords turns into one set of notes, way easier. And also, I can play different licks that I pick up or ideas that I hear. Or if I'm listening to Charlie Parker play that solo and I hear him do something there, I know, oh, he played this over a 2-5. And I can, learn that lick. And every time I see a 2-5-1 chord change, I can play that lick. And that's exactly my first college professor who really kind of made me break through on that. That's exactly what he had me do. He sat me down because he realized I couldn't play any bop or any of that kind of stuff. And I was all but a lost cause. And he explained kind of this whole 2-5-1 thing to me. And he's like, okay, Dave, every time you get to that 2-5-1 chord, have 1 lick to play. And then later you can have 2 licks to play, and then 3. And you start to kind of build some language. And when you think about it, when you speak, yes, you can say original things, but we're still using words. We're not just, it would be like trying to learn how to speak English only knowing the alphabet. We learn the alphabet early on, but what we learn is words and phrases and ways to communicate. And jazz is no different. So learning 2-5-1 licks, I think it's a great first set of licks to do. There's some great books out there. There's the Jamie Aebersold 2-5-1 book, the David Baker How to Play Bebop stuff. Steve Neff is a current guy. If you see any of his stuff, he has all kinds of cool hip 2-5 licks that you can go check out at his site. Just so much out there. There's tons of material because so many players, jazz players see a lot of 2-5-1s, and we want lots of language and lots of interesting things to say over it. But yeah, and when you're doing it, and if you're thinking of your own ideas, you can think of them all in that one key of what the 2-5-1 lands on. So yeah, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna play some of the first 2-5-1 licks I learned, and play some of my favorites over a repeating 2-5-1 chord progression. And then in the next video, we'll talk about some specifics and some jazz standards, and kind of point out what they look like, and do some playing examples, and try to use as much of those licks as I can to give you an idea of how it sounds in context. So yeah, first of all, let's get started with this. So yeah, that's just a basic few pointers on what a 2-5-1 sounds like, some ideas of what to play over it. It is literally a limitless topic. You could talk about 2-5 stuff forever, and countless books have been written on it. But really the biggest thing is just getting that sound into your head and learning to recognize it on the page. So yeah, in an upcoming video, I'd like to take a couple tunes and we can analyze it, and we can throw some of the licks that we know over the 2-5-1s in that song. And some songs are going to be tons of 2-5s. Some will have them just occasionally. And there are jazz songs with no 2-5s in them. I'm not trying to say it's in everything, but it's in so much. And if you can get them under your fingers, you are going to be a lot more well equipped to play over jazz songs and kind of have that bebop sound. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me in the comments below. Reach out to me at the Sax Shop at Schmidt Music. Otherwise, we will see you in the next video. Remember, if you like this, subscribing, commenting, liking, all that stuff really helps. I always hate saying that at the end of videos, but it does really help us, and it helps build the channel and gives me more reason to keep making videos. So otherwise, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks very much. Talk to you next time.